Hello, hello. Good evening, everybody. We are on Cozy Talks Live. I'm going to give you guys a couple minutes to jump on board, take a sip of my hot tea, and I'm also going to get my live feed going on Instagram. Get my Instagram folks on here as well. There we go. All right, let's get this evening started. I see a couple of you guys jumping on board already. So let me know. Don't be shy, guys. Let me know who you are, where you're from, and what is in your mug this evening. It is a dark and stormy night over here in Tampa, Florida right now. So I'm kind of enjoying all hearing the rain coming down. All right, let's see what else we got. We got Brian Bishop. What's going on, Brian? You got your Bustelo on board? All right, I see you guys coming on board. Hey, Scott, I got your question here, and you're in West Virginia with your Sprite Zero. Thank you for coming in. All right, let's see who else. We got Eric coming in with his vanilla Coke, listening to me from the YouTube channel. Guys, just as a reminder, I am broadcasting to YouTube, Facebook, and Instagram at the same time. Kimberly says, I shared you with several of my Facebook groups. Kimberly, I really appreciate that. I do get spread the word of mouth. It's a small organization that I have here, but I appreciate all the support. We've got Richard coming in from Arkansas with his dark roast again. Oh man, I really wish I could have some coffee right about now, but I would be up all night. We got Marianne coming in. Marianne, I hope it's not so cold for you in the Dakotas. We got Dean in Hollywood, Florida. Sherry coming in from Orlando with her water. We got Christy. Oh, Christy, I'm glad you could make it with iced tea from Auburn, Nebraska. Brian, just iced water? What's going on, man? Emily, I got your question just in time. So thank you for sending that in from Central PA with her lemon iced tea tonight. All right, let me just flip back over to my Instagram channel. I see Timothy has been on board watching. We got Valerie and also some of these very interesting Instagram handle names. Grande Rojo in 85 in California coming in. So welcome, guys. Guys, those of you who are kind of new to my Instagram show, just feel free to post comments and post questions in the comments section. All right, for those of you who are watching the replay, thank you very much for watching the replay. Please put that into the comments section. Put replay, put hey Cozy. If you have a question, put it in there. I do like to go back and read the comments after a show is closed down to see if I missed any questions. We got Tom on board and Denise. There's my Tar Heel. Good evening for the Sweet 16 Tar Heel State. Love it. We got Mark saying he booked his reservations, looking for, oh, goody, I'm going to get to see you in June too. I can't wait. I want to see what you've been up to, Mark. We got Shelly from Minnesota. Tom is watching from the Sugar Shack tonight. That sounds like interesting. We got Linda from New York. And Marianne says it's getting better. 32 was a high today. Oh my, yeah. I won't tell you what the weather was like here in Tampa. It was kind of nice. We got Diane. Oh, Diana, it's been a while since I've seen you. I'm glad you're here from Virginia. And Rich watching me from the YouTube channel from Arkansas. All right, guys. And hey, there's my girl Felicia. Girl, it's a party now. All right, guys, let's go ahead and get this started for real. So for those of you joining me for the first time, welcome. My name is Cozy Belloso. I'm a physical therapist amputee specialist here in Tampa, Florida. I've been a PT for over 23 years, and my passion is working with the limb loss community. Hello, Liz. So for those of you who are new to this show is for those in the amputee community. So that includes amputees, clinicians, caregivers, and family members. And you are welcome to put your questions into the comments section. You can also email me your questions to my email address. It's right there. And those of you who are not yet on my texting service, I'm finding that is one of the best methods to get in touch with me and to send me your questions through there. All right. So there we go. We're going to push that out right front, get that out of the way. And it says, Tom is boiling maple. Oh my gosh, Tom, are you making more of that amazing maple syrup? Y'all, Tom sent me the most gorgeous bottle of maple syrup. Like it was just like right out of the tree, and my kids and I were fighting over it. It was delicious. We got Debbie coming in from Texas. We got Tracy. Thanks for joining in. All right, guys. So tonight we got a couple of really nice questions. Not too many questions, which is great because that means those of you who are live and want to put your questions in the comment section, we will be able to get to those as well. Got lots of like really cool news, and we'll be sharing that throughout the evening. Those of you on my Instagram channel who are listening, it's kind of new that I'm broadcasting to Instagram. We got Timothy coming in from Minnesota and having his hot cocoa. Valerie, welcome on board as well. Feel free to put your questions into the comment section. All right, so let's get started. we have the first question coming in, and Mark had he kind of wanted me to touch upon this. He said, could you talk on arm amputation, whether it's above or below the elbow, and how a prosthetic would be fitted and operated in an upper extremity amputee? Now, unfortunately, I don't do a lot of upper extremity arm amputee talks on the show. In fact, I really never dedicated one, and that's something that in the future I would very much like to do. I'm always on the lookout for, especially any companies that specialize in upper extremity care. So whenever I do have a question for upper extremity, I try to show y'all a little bit of love there. So the way a person would be fit for an upper extremity prosthetic device is very similar to the lower extremity. You have the socket and you have the suspension system, how the socket is held on. And it would go for a below the knee, listen to me, below elbow as it would for an above the elbow. Okay. And basically there's a couple of different ways it can be operated. You have your mechanical arms, and they are operated mainly by the shoulder. So with the shoulder movements, it will operate the end device, which is the hook or the hand, right? And that is how it is worked. With some of these more fancy schmancy, we're seeing myoelectric devices, also sometimes called the mind control devices. They'll have electrodes on the arm, and the electrodes pick up the muscle impulses and it operates the arm. So that's kind of like the basic gist of how it works. We're also seeing a lot of osseointegration in the upper extremity, which is kind of exciting. Not so much here in the United States just yet because it's not FDA approved in the United States, but globally we are starting to see more upper extremity osseointegration and then the technology that goes with it, which is kind of cool. I'm kind of hoping to do a show with that sometime in the future with maybe Integrum. I don't know. We'll have to see what comes down the pike. Let's see. Tom says, no worries. Oh, Tom, you are awesome. I'm gonna have to hide it from my kids. All right, let me just kind of look over here, pop over. I'm popping. So guys, like with the streaming software that I have to like kind of navigate a couple of different screens to make sure I'm getting the questions from all across the board. Emily says, are upper limb prosthetics as heavy as lower limb prosthetics? Yes, and not as heavy. I mean, obviously the leg prosthetic is going to weigh less, but it feels heavy sometimes to the user. And again, a lot of it depends on the length of the residual limb. You know, the shorter that residual limb, the more weight the person's going to have to carry in that prosthetic device. Also, if the suspension, you know, that's the key. And again, guys, I am by no means an expert on upper extremity prosthetic devices. This is just kind of like the general umbrella with prosthetics. You know, so you have to get really, really good suspension with any prosthetic device, and that will help make the weight feel lighter. Okay. Any prosthetic device that you get, whether it's for the arm or the leg, is never going to be as heavy as the anatomical limb. The anatomical limb weighs between the bones and the muscle and the fluids inside the limb is going to weigh more than a prosthetic limb. The prosthetic limb just feels heavier because it's just not a part of your body. Right. And here's something you can kind of think about it. If you were to pick up a 5-pound bag of sugar and have to carry that around, that's going to feel pretty heavy, right? It's going to feel pretty heavy. It's not a part of your body, okay? Versus if you gain 5 pounds, you may not really even notice if you've gained 5 pounds, but carrying a 5-pound bag of sugar, it's sure is going to seem a lot heavier to you. I don't know if that's kind of a clumsy analogy, but that's sometimes how people can understand why is it that a prosthetic device is going to feel heavier, right? So that's why we stress, again, one of the many reasons we try to stress early proprioceptive training, where we try to really pound in that connection between the mind and the prosthetic device for the brain to accept that prosthetic device as its own as best as possible. Hey, Pastor David, good to have you in the house as well. We got Vikram. Oh my goodness, Vikram, we haven't seen you in a while. And we've got Stun Plum. That's a very interesting name on YouTube. And we've got Pamela coming in from upstate New York. So yeah, you know, upper extremity is definitely something I want to learn more about as a clinician. And I'd love to be able to bring a little bit more information to the show for you all. That being said, Arm Dynamics. Thank you, Grande Rojo. I'd love to know what your name is because you have a really cool handle. So Arm Dynamics, they do exclusively upper extremity prosthetic devices. Well, thank you for letting me know about that. And guys, for those of you who are listening who are upper extremity amputees, while I'm not the expert, I can certainly try to find answers if you have any questions for me. So don't be shy, put them in the comments section. All right, let's see. Ooh, this was a cool question. Okay, so David asks, have you ever seen an above the knee alignment straight through the socket, right? So when David submitted this question, I was like, can you clarify a little bit? Because straight through the socket is not, so here's what. All right, my trusty socket. Hey, Jeff, what's going on? Jeff, I saw your announcement about getting the 2 new Kenevo knees. Man, I cannot wait to see you go on those, man. You're going to have to let me know how those feel. All right. So when it comes to an alignment of the socket, okay, and guys, as clinicians, this can be, a little bit on the tricky side, right? Identifying alignment, meaning how is this leg aligned to your body? So let's review first a little bit about normal alignment, right? And poor Bob is missing an arm. He's our upper extremity. Oh, here it is. Here we go. Let's put Bob back together again. For those of you wondering, watching the show for the first time, this is Bob. He is my snarky and somewhat reluctant patient model. Okay, so in human anatomy, Bob actually looks more like a male pelvis than a female pelvis, okay? But we have the femur, and Bob's femur is not really behaving itself right now. But in a natural femur, it's going to be angled in just ever so slightly. And we call that adduction, A-D-D-U-C-T-I-O-N, right? So that is the normal alignment of the human pelvis. It goes in just a little bit, and then the tibia, and that's what creates, sorry, I'm having a hard time trying to get this the right way, right? So you can see it goes in, and then it comes down. Okay, now in some people, it might go in just a little too much and it causes kind of like that knock-kneed effect. And in other people, it may not be going in as much and it causes the bow-legged look. Okay, so that's where that comes from. It starts over here at the hip. Now, in general, males are going to have less of an angle in, right? Their legs are going to come a little bit further straight down because their hips are more narrow. Does that make sense, guys? So in the female hips, the female pelvis, right, it's going to be wider. So the femur is going to angle in more. That's what gives women their nice little curves right there, right? Men, it's going to come straight down. Now, when it comes time to making an above the knee socket, okay, the femur is cut. And I need to get a model where I can actually cut the femur. Anyways, so the femur is cut and it's free floating. Right? It no longer has the lower leg to anchor it down. It doesn't have the groin, the inner thigh muscles to help keep it kind of pulled in and held in place like this. Okay, so that's what the socket is trying to do. The socket is trying to get this to angle in just a little bit and then be held steady in there. Okay, so that's what's going on this way, this plane. It's called the coronal or the frontal plane. Right? So a prosthetist is going to try to set the socket in or out to try to get that angle going, right? Then let's turn it to the side. Okay? So when we look at the human body, when physical therapists, when prosthetists look at the human body, we look at the different planes. We look at the frontal plane through the front, the sagittal plane, S for side, sagittal. That's how I used to remember it in PT school. Okay. And then we also have the transverse plane. And that's the one that if you were to cut the body this way. So we're looking at all the different movements in those planes. It's really cool, but it can get a little bit hairy if you're not keeping everything straight, right? So when we're looking at the person from the frontal plane, the frontal view, right, we're looking to see how much of an angle this femur is. If it's too far out, if it's too far in, or just right. With me so far? All right, so we put the person to the side, right? And what we're looking at here is the knee, okay? So if you imagine just a line that drops down, okay, drops down, it's called the plumb line, the weight line. And actually plumbers do use this. It's like the little string and it has a little weight on the bottom. And we drop it to check the alignment. Now the plumb line should come a little bit in front of the hip and a little bit in front of the knee, okay? And the prosthetist can adjust the socket, right? So if the person is really not stable, right? They have perhaps a very short residual limb. They don't have a whole lot of strength. They're losing their balance. Their knee is buckling. Then they're going to set the alignment to encourage the knee to stay extended. Okay. And they're going to move that line forward in front of the knee. Okay. If the person is someone who has a longer residual limb, or they've been doing gait training with their neighborhood friendly physical therapist and they're gaining stability in their limb and they want to have a little bit more freedom of movement, then we start to set that alignment a little further back to allow for knee flexion. Okay. How many of you guys remember physics, high school physics? Raising hands. How many of y'all took high school physics? Show of hands. Show of hands. Yeah, Gummy Dog says, Bob, I know Bob. He's been through the gauntlet lately. He needs to go to spa day or something like that. Hey there, Ashley. Glad you could join in. We got Jerry Ann with white chocolate coffee. Jerry Ann, if I send you my address, will you send me some of that white chocolate coffee? Because that sounds really good. We got Andrea, my OT, on board. Andrea, you just missed the upper extremity prosthetic question. My camera's very blurry tonight. It looks, I don't know why, it's looking pretty good from this end. All right, we got James, but no, I'm glad you are here, James, on your break. All right, so, okay, so yeah, David took physics, Marianne took physics, Emily says she hated it, but she took it, Scott took physics, Sherry took physics. Okay, so guys, when you talk about moment arms and creating a moment, you remember that in physics, ground reaction forces, that is basically human physics, right? So the practice of physical therapy, the practice of prosthetics is understanding how physics is applied to the human body. So this is where my nerd flag goes like all over the place, right? And that's what it is. That's what you're doing is we're playing around with the lines, how they align with the ground, right? And how can we use gravity to our advantage? Okay. So like I said, let's just do a quick review. We want to get that femur aligned properly. We want it to be just ever so slightly adducted in, and we want it nice and stable. And then from the side view, from the side point, what we want to see is stability with a little bit of mobility. Okay. So someone who has a shorter residual limb, someone who's not as strong, right? We're going to put that knee to get a little bit more extension, kind of like locking the knee just a little bit, right? So that they're not buckling and falling. And then as the person progresses and hopefully gets better and gets better balance, then we can move that line, okay, that alignment a little bit further back so that they can have a little bit more flexion, right? I realized one of my colleagues, she did this really beautiful visual with magnets to show how alignment works. And I'm going to see if I can grab one from her and show it on the live show at some point. All right, we got Jen Lyons on board. So Ashley, perfect question. She says, why is it that every couple of months my alignment seems to change, even if I haven't changed my shoes? Okay, and that's a really great question. And again, with our anatomical limbs, right, our body is constantly making changes with every single step that we take, right? Our microprocessor is right here and it's operating at light speed, quite literally at light speed to make these little changes. So if we take a step too far forward, right, our knee's going to catch, everything's going to catch and go into place, and all that alignment is going to automatically adjust to prevent us from falling down, right? But unfortunately, with as wonderful as the technology is nowadays with prosthetic devices, it's never going to be as fast as the human brain. Okay. So even with our microprocessor units, it's going to be not as quick as the human brain. And then as you move through your day, as your days go, your body's making these tiny, small changes. You might be gaining a little bit of strength. You might be losing a little bit of strength. You might be doing a small gait deviation that you don't realize, right? So your alignment may not necessarily be customized for every single step that you take. Okay. So over the course of time, this is why I always advise folks, even if you have a wonderful fitting socket and you're nice and stable with your mobility, it's good to check in with your prosthetist once or twice a year to have them take a look at your alignment to see if things have shifted, to see if things have changed. Yeah. All right. We got Beth Hudson coming in from Bradenton, Florida. John with his post-workout protein shake. So Don, what is your protein of choice? I'm really been getting a lot into reading nutrition and things lately. So I'm always curious to hear what kind of protein people like to use. I know, right, Felicia, that white chocolate coffee sounds amazing. It really does. Okay, good. So my video is better, Jerry Ann. I did nothing, so I don't know what happened. So I'm glad it's better. Ashley says every few months I have to get the alignment tweaked because I seem to start walking on the outside of my foot. And again, Ashley, you're an incredibly active individual. So it could just be that little things in the foot might be coming just a smidgen loose, right, with your activity level. And you just have to go in and get the nuts and bolts tightened up a little bit. Oh, the internet is glitchy today. Yeah. Well, we have a huge thunderstorm going on in the background I'm surprised you guys can't hear it. So that might be why the camera got a little glitchy there. All right. So in reference to this question, David also mentioned, I've seen a lot of amputees fighting to walk on ill-aligned sockets, and it's very concerning. And I don't know if it's ignorance or laziness on the part of the prosthetist, but I do know it's wrong. So it's the alignment to me is it's like second to the fit and comfort of the socket. So the fit and comfort of the socket, number one, right? And then the alignment is a very, very, very close number two. Okay. So if the socket fits well, but you're not aligned properly, then you're going to be trying to walk and your alignment is going to be working against you. It's either going to be too loose, for lack of better word, and it's going to cause you to buckle and not have stability, or the opposite. If the prosthetist was a bit aggressive in making the alignment too stable, then you're not going to be able to walk through your gait. And a lot of this applies to my above the knee amputees. Below the knee amputees, yes, we still have to look at alignment, but certainly with the above the knee, with the knee, that, plays more of a role. And again, this is just based on what I see coming through my clinic, right? So if I have somebody who's new to using a prosthesis, usually I'll find that the prosthetist might be more conservative with the alignment, right? They might set, in the case of an above the knee, they might set the knee to be more leaning towards extension, right? They might outset the foot just a little bit to give that person stability, a little bit more stability in the beginning, certainly for my bilateral amputees, right? So as the person works with me with gait training, then I can call the prosthetist and say, hey, I know you said it really nice and safe, but can we start backing off on this alignment just a little bit, give the patient a little bit more freedom and give them more normal gait mechanics with it, okay? Second thing I see, because a lot of times patients will come to me months and sometimes even years after their amputation, and they never had the chance to work with a physical therapist. So we have to kind of backtrack and undo some knots. And over the course of years, a prosthetist might adjust alignment to help the patient. Okay. And we've talked about this on the show. When you see someone with a gait deviation, like when we're looking at a gait deviation on a patient, a physical therapist is going to be asking themselves, what's wrong with the patient? What do we got to fix in the patient to fix the gait deviation? And then the prosthetist is looking at it from a different lens saying, well, what do we got to fix in the prosthesis with the alignment to fix the gait deviation, right? And the truth usually lies somewhere in between. When a person has a gait deviation, 9 times out of 10, it's because there's some sort of deficiency in muscle strength, range of motion, proprioceptive input, balance, basically something coming from the patient, right? And then there's also something with that alignment that's either preventing the person from having a normal gait mechanic, or it's just giving them a little too much freedom and it's causing instability. Okay, so when you see someone who's got like not that great alignment, that's kind of one of the first things I think about is, okay, what was the prosthetist trying to do to compensate? And why did they give them that particular alignment? And it's playing Monday morning quarterback sometimes, but I've learned to give the prosthetist the benefit of the doubt. And if I see somebody who's a patient with some kind of unusual alignment that I can't figure out the why behind it, I just give them a call and I say, hey, what was going on with the patient the day you saw them? Right? That you put this alignment here. Okay. Another common thing I'll see is adjustments and compensations for hip flexion contracture, right? So a lot of times a prosthetist might put a hip flexion plate, and it's just a plate to help accommodate for a hip flexion contracture. So a patient might come to see me a few months afterwards, and they may have actually worked out that hip flexion contraction and they don't need that anymore, right? So call the prosthetist, hey, can we remove this hip flexion plate to allow the person to really move through that full range of motion now, right? Alignment's one of those tricky puzzle things. And for me, it's something that it still challenges me. Today, that's kind of one of the many reasons I love working in amputee care is, seeing a person walk in the parallel bars and doing a gait assessment and going, okay, what's coming from the patient that I can fix as a physical therapist? And what is coming from the alignment of the prosthesis that needs to go back to the clinic to get tweaked? So Marianne says, Gene Pro is my protein of choice. Okay. Is that like a whey protein or a pea protein? Just curious. All right. David says, can a residual limb be too long as it relates to limitations to building in the room for microprocessor needs post ankle foot? Yes. Yes, it can be. And that's kind of like the eternal debate. Is it better to have a Symes amputation, which is where the foot is removed, or is it better to have a below the knee amputation? Is it better to have a knee disarticulation where you have the lower, all the femur intact, or is it better to have just a very long AK? Okay. So when you have a very long residual limb, whether it's the below the knee residual limb or knee disarticulation, you're dealing with the bulbous end of the bone, right? So even though Bob's a Slim Jim here, you can see that he's got the bulbous ends of the bone right here. And same thing with the ankles. So when it comes to fitting a prosthesis, it can be a little bit challenging. And that's where I really love the use of a Click Medical RevoFit adjustable socket, because you can kind of open up the panels of that socket. The person can get in and then tighten it up all the way. Okay. And then when it comes to build height, right, that can also affect the choices available, right? So when you have a really, really long Symes amputation, you're going to be a little bit more limited in the choice of prosthetic feet. Okay. So you have to accommodate for the height there. And with the knee disarticulation, what usually happens is with the knee joints, they may not necessarily be even. So when a person sits down, the prosthetic knee might be sticking out further than the anatomical knee. Now, the benefits is that the person has a longer lever arm, right? So when I have someone who's a knee disarticulation patient, they almost function almost like a below the knee patient because they have such a nice long lever arm. Okay. But again, this is something that is definitely in the wheelhouse of any skilled prosthetist to be able to handle. All right, let's see what's going on over in Instagram. So Susan says, I walked with a cane for 11 years. I finally got a socket that doesn't hurt, so I do not need my cane, but I'm having trouble with balance right now. And again, so when you're walking, we get this question a lot on the show, is how do we get off of, hey, Coach Mac, how you doing, man? Good to see you. We do get a lot of questions regarding the use of an assistive walking device, right? If you've been using a cane for several years, and usually that's what prompts people to come into my clinic after several years, as they say, I've been using this thing and I want to get off it once and for all. Is it possible? Okay. So part of it is, figuring out what is the underlying reason why you're still on a cane or a walker or crutches. Is it because of weakness? Is it because of balance? Is it because of proprioceptive issues? Is it because of a little bit of everything? Right. And then you throw in there just habit, right? So with the habit of using a cane, it's just something your body, that's what imprints into your brain. You develop those habits. So sometimes it's a matter of also just breaking that habit and establishing new ones. And I've had quite a few successful cases of folks that, come in months, years after their amputation, and they get off those assisted devices. We have to put in a lot of foundational work, right? We have to kind of turn back the wheel a little bit and fill in the gaps of the foundation that they didn't receive, either with their initial physical therapy or that perhaps they didn't receive physical therapy. And that's usually the case. And fill in those gaps and get them off the walking device. All right, let's see. So Josh says, as a child, 100% yes, and need to start taking Symes, that way their limb still grows. Yeah, that's an excellent viewpoint. And for me, I kind of get into an argument sometimes. I have one of my mentors. He is, retired now for 3 years, and he's probably one of the best darn physical therapists I've ever met. And his son is a congenital Symes amputation. So he and I have always gone back and forth over the years of what are the benefits of below the knee, like a long, long, long below the knee versus a Symes amputation. And ultimately it really just boils down to that particular individual. What is going to be that person's life? Is it a child, like you mentioned, Josh, where you want to try to leave those growth plates intact to allow it to continue to grow and give that child as active a lifestyle as possible with the longest lever arm that you possibly can. And then weighing that against the prosthetic choices that they will have during their lifetime. Or is it somebody who is older and perhaps more towards the end of their life, and it might be more difficult for them to have a Symes amputation for several reasons. So, again, for me, it always boils down to who is the individual, what is it that they want in their life and what is it that they're looking to do and what will be the best decision for them there. All right, let's see what else we got. We got. Ooh, okay. So guys, you know that every week I make some sort of shameless plug, right? And this is my plug for this week. I released a blog and a podcast. I launched both at the same time about a month ago. And so far the views have been picking up beautifully. I am on every basically podcast platform, you name it, I'm on it. And I wish I had my team here tonight because they could help me name all the different platforms. But I'm on all the major platforms, including Spotify, Apple Podcasts, like all the different ones. But basically, if you go to my website, right, kositalks.com, there is a podcast link and there's a link to my blog. Okay. And this week I released the blog and the podcast of how to choose a prosthetic foot. Okay. This is probably the most common question I get from you all as viewers. The first podcast was everything you need to know about prosthetic feet. So it's almost like a two-parter because there's just a lot of information about this. So the first podcast was everything you need to know about prosthetic feet. And the one I just released this week is how to actually choose the prosthetic foot. Okay. Ooh. Then I have a blog that goes with it. And then I have what are called cheat sheets, right? So quick reference guides with regards to these podcasts and blogs. And these guides, I even have worksheets for you to be able to fill out and take to your prosthetist appointment for those of you who are looking to get your first foot or looking to get a new foot or a replacement foot. Okay, so if you sign up for my emails, you'll get those cheat sheets and you can do all of that from kositalks.com. You can watch the podcast listen to the podcast, read the blog, and then sign up for my emails and you'll get those cheat sheets. Okay. So guys, it would be a huge favor for me if you guys go listen and then subscribe to the podcast and 5-star review and all those kind of things that help podcasts grow. All right, moving on. We got Randall Archer saying, what time frame is reasonable from getting your prosthetic and no longer using your cane? I received my leg in January and I've worked hard and not walk with 2 canes and I'm ready to just walk. Randall, can you give me a little bit more information? Are you working with a physical therapist? Are you an above the knee or below the knee? And how were you walking prior to your amputation? Okay. Were you independent with walking? Were you walking with a walker because maybe your mobility was getting really impaired? If you can give me those kind of details, I might be able to kind of help you a little bit with that answer. Shelly asks, what's the best socket that doesn't have so much bulk around your knee? A well-made one? No. So again, so Shelly, can you give me a couple more hints when it comes to bulk? Are you a knee disarticulation patient? Are you a below where, sometimes the knee disarticulation patients, they might have a little bit more bulbous end and it looks a little bulkier. Or is it because you're a below the knee amputee and you perhaps have high walls on the sides of your knee? If you can give me a little more information there, that might help me too. Let's see, nerve pain and striker pain still hasn't stopped after 5 years of it as a hip disarticulation. I also need to decide if I'm going to travel or not for a socket. Thanks, Floyd, drinking water. So Floyd, I think if you're talking about the striker pain, referring to phantom pain, that's, I'm actually overdue for doing another show on that. I've got several shows on the YouTube channel about that. If you're, I'm curious, are you looking to travel to a particular clinic to get a socket made? Hey there, Keith. Thank you for joining in, man. Let's see. Tom says, okay, there we go. When I had my amputation, they left me a long residual limb, and that limited me to what kind of foot I was going to have. Then I had to have a revision, and they removed another 3.5 to 4 inches, and that opened everything up for me. I was able to have any kind of foot that I liked, right? And again, you gotta weigh the pros and the cons. Longer residual limb means that you get to have that much more of a lever arm, and it's an advantage when it comes to gait mechanics. But it means you're also going to be a little bit more limited in the prosthetic devices that are available to you. Okay. All right, let me just pop over to the Instagram channel, make sure we're all cool there. A little bit more of a quieter bunch on the YouTube channel, or on the Instagram channel. All right, let's see what we got. Pull out one of these other questions. Shelly says, I'm a BK with high walls and I've been working to bend my knees for 3 months. Okay. So a couple of questions, Shelly. If your therapist, excuse me, if your prosthetist built your socket with really high walls, it could have been with the intention of providing your knee with more stability. Okay. So if perhaps you had a lot of weakness in the knee, if you had a lot of quad weakness and weakness in your hamstrings, right? They may have been doing that to give your knee more stability. Okay. So again, when I see someone come in with a socket like that, that's one of the first things that I'm thinking about in my brain. And also it provides suspension, right? So they might put those higher walls so that that socket can be suspended on the lower part of your thigh, right? So my question would be are you exhibiting weakness, right? Do you have quad weakness? Do you have instability in your knee? And again, this is where the physical therapist can really shine and get that knee nice and strong, which would allow your prosthetist to maybe lower those walls. Okay, so that'd be something I'd be asking your prosthetist, is saying, is there a way that we can lower these walls just a little bit without sacrificing too much stability, just so I can have a little bit more mobility? Okay. See, Randall says, I'm an AK. I have 2 times a week therapist and prosthetist. Always been very active. Hiking, was able to walk with no problem, and lost my leg through peripheral arterial disease. Okay, let me just kind of scroll back here for just a second. Okay. So as an AK, and again, these are just very ballpark figures, Randall. Sorry, I just want to make sure I'm answering it correctly. Very active and hot. Okay. So the textbook for an AK, right, will say that it is a physical therapy regimen of 8 to 12 weeks, 2 times a week. Right? Or excuse me. Sorry, guys. I probably should be drinking a little bit more coffee. Not 8 to 12 weeks. My apologies. 12 to 20 physical therapy sessions, right? 2 times a week. So that comes out to 6 to 8 weeks, right? That is the textbook answer. Okay. And that is if the person has no other issues going on and the socket fits beautifully from day one and there's no problems with the socket. Okay. I very rarely have a case like that, Randall. Very rarely. Oftentimes, when people start to work with me, what happens is the limb volume starts to shrink and it affects the fit of the socket. And if we're lucky, all we have to do is just add some socks and ply to accommodate for that limb volume shrinking. Other times, it might throw off the alignment. It might throw off the actual fit of the socket and it starts to be uncomfortable for the individual. Okay. So usually I find that that's an obstacle, is that we'll progress with therapy and then we have to put therapy on hold for just a little bit while they fix the socket issues, and then we start therapy again. And it's kind of a little bit of a back and forth. Okay. Another reason is if your therapist, first of all, I'm very glad to hear that you're working with a physical therapist, because there's many folks here who have not seen a physical therapist. With my patients who are AKs, and with all of my patients in the beginning, I really, really, really do a lot of proprioception work. Okay, so what does that mean? Proprioception is your body's ability to know where it is in space, right? So my popular example is if I close my eyes and I tell you to give me a thumbs up, hopefully you'll do this and give me the right finger, right? Okay, so when you have that amputation and you lose your limb, your body loses the sense of proprioception of that part of the limb. So they put a prosthetic leg on and a prosthetic foot, and your brain is not recognizing that foot as its own. Okay. So the early foundational exercises that I do with my patients are meant to address this, right? We literally hammer in the sense of proprioception into the brain and do a lot of early weight bearing into that socket and really emphasizing that, okay, along with strengthening range of motion and everything like that, okay? So if your therapist was able to take the time to build that foundation, right, that's usually what indicates the success in getting off that cane or walker. Okay. There may come a point in time, sometimes with my patients, where we're progressing, we're doing great. They're getting ready to get out of the bars without a cane. And they get out of the bars without the cane. And then all of a sudden they're, a little unstable. And we have to kind of bring them back into the bars, do a little bit more foundational work, and then put them out into the bars again. And then after that, there's usually like a little hump where the person goes with the cane, 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 cane. We take off the cane, they go down, and then they get used to it, and then boom, they take off. Right. So when it comes time to taking that cane away, you might notice a little bit of a regression. And your physical therapist, again, should be keeping an eye on this to make sure that it's not because you're not missing something. Right. So hopefully I'm making sense with that, Randall. When you work with a patient and you say, okay, they're ready to get off that cane, they might have a little bit of unsteadiness. Okay. But if you've done your job as a physical therapist and the patient has done their homework, right, on their home exercise program, they'll be able to get over that hump and move forward. Or they may need to go back and do a little bit of remedial work. Okay. So Randall, I hope that helps a little bit. I would tell you, Randall, please don't get discouraged. You have all the right pieces in the right place. If you have that therapist and the prosthetist, you were active before your amputation. It's reasonable to say that you will be able to get off that cane. You just got to keep working at it. So if you was in January, I think, did you say January? Let me just make sure I'm remembering this correctly. Excuse me. Okay, so you got your leg in January. So it's been January, February, March. So it's been a little less than 3 months, right, working on this. So it's about 12 weeks. So, it is going to take a little bit of time, and it might take a little bit more time. But, and that's my question to you, Randall. Is your therapist somebody who is experienced working with amputees? So Shelly says, I can walk all over with the walker, with the iWalker 3. The iWalker, the iWalker. Is the iWalker that one where you kind of bend your knee and you put it into there? Is that what I'm thinking of? Is that what that is? Van Gregory says, hey, from Texas, am I attending Empower Fest in Hollywood, Florida? Yes, I am. So I will be attending Empower Fest. It is a huge event put on by Hanger. It'll be my first time going, and it's in my home state right here in Florida. So I am super psyched about that. For me, anytime I get a chance to I'm hoping to do a gait clinic. They're still kind of going to let me know what my role is in the Empower Fest. But I'm really excited. I know there are several of you that will be attending, and I'm so excited to meet some of you. Van Gregory, I hope this means that you're going too. Is that what you're trying to like bait me into right now? Are you tempting me there with that bait? I hope you're going to be there. Let's see. Ooh, maybe David Rotter or back to John Hadding for socket revisions, or at least one he made me, but it's a long drive. I'll tell you what though, Powerful Word Jesus, I love your handle. Either or. Like I've worked with John Hadding from afar, because he's obviously not in the same state. But he and I have had a couple of common patients, and he's a phenomenal prosthetist. And David Rotter, I haven't met him yet, but I hope to meet him. I hope to get to work with him someday, because I know he's also a phenomenal prosthetist. And for me, y'all have heard me say it on the show, when you find that clinician that can either as a therapist help you walk, or as a prosthetist make a good socket, it is worth the travel and however it is that you can get to them. I recently had a patient a couple weeks ago that she came in. She lives in Alaska, right, and came in to Tampa to come work with me. And her prosthetist is in Chicago. And let me tell you, the socket that prosthetist made was amazing. But I know it's not always possible for everyone to be able to travel. But if that's something that's in your wheelhouse and a good clinician, then go get him. Jill says, going on my 5th revision. Oh, bless your heart, Jill. Knowledge has helped me to ask for another amputation surgery. I am so happy to hear that, Jill. I'm so happy. And I hope this is your 5th one, and then your last one, hopefully. And hopefully you can move on from that. What's going on? Oh my gosh, I got Mike Chua in the house. Are you kidding me right now? This guy is like the bomb physical therapist, and he's listening to me. Man, I got to clean up my act. All right, let's see. Ben Gregory says, yes, registered and anxious. Oh, wonderful. Oh, and you're in the 5K. Ben Gregory, you and I are running together. That's all I got to say, man. Grasshopper and Kemosabe, here we come. Debbie says, amen to that. I travel good distances for a good one. It really is. It really is. Let's see. Sorry, Shelly. I know I'm trying to because the comments are coming in staggered, so I'm trying to keep up my conversation with you. Sorry, guys, I'm scrolling through here as fast as I can. Okay, so yeah, the Eyewalker is the one that has the bendy knee and thing there. So, Shelly, I guess my question is, why are you using the Eyewalker? Is it just because it's easy to pop on, like to scoot around your house with it? Do you mind kind of expanding a little bit more on that one for me? All right, and then let's see, there was one more question here. Scott. Not forget Scott. So Scott says, is it normal to have worse phantom pain while sick? I had the dreaded stomach virus last week, and my phantom pain was the worst I've had in months. Dehydration, possibly. Yes, 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 and yes. When it comes to phantom pain, for me, it's like part science, but part like voodoo magic. Yeah, like we don't know. Sometimes I don't think even the best of us clinicians know what's up with phantom pain, right? And that's a whole nother show for later. But as far as triggers for phantom pain, yes, changes in temperature. I've heard psychological stress, physical stress, such as the stress of being sick, tight clothing, irritable things that are irritating to the skin. So just any kind of irritant in the environment. I've heard a lot of different triggers. So yeah, being sick, absolutely. And in terms of dehydration, yes, especially if you have a stomach virus and you're losing fluids and you're getting dehydrated, it also means you're losing electrolytes. And that to me is also, I've seen that could be a trigger when a person's dehydrated for the phantom limb pain. So guys, let's do a quick Quosi poll. How many of you, when you get sick, you feel like your phantom pain is triggered? Like you notice, like when you've got a cold coming on or whatever it is, stomach virus or stomach bug, and you're just like, yeah, bracing for it because you know that there's a possibility you're going to get a phantom pain episode. Marianne, oh, I know. I would love to go to a Baka boot camp. Oh my gosh. I've been talking to the powers that be at Hanger for like literally, no joke, 4 years to try to coordinate me going to a Baka boot camp. 4 years. We're going to make it happen someday. I have confidence. Brian says yes. Linda says, I was just in Aruba with 87 degrees and came back to New York in the 29 or 34 degrees. Ooh, does that set off your phantom pain, Linda? That sudden change in temperature like that? Kimberly says, yep, always. Pamela says yes to the phantom pain. Christy says yes. Shelly says yes. Jerry Ann says, I have phantom pain when it rains out. Excuse me. David says it doesn't take much to trigger the phantom pain. Debbie says yes, definitely triggers phantom pain. Randall says yes. Kathy says yes. Jill says yes. Bingo. Health issues do bring on phantom pain. So it's unanimous there. Phantom pain is always worse when I'm under the weather for Patricia. So David says, pick me up by way of Atlanta to the Baka. Yeah. Jeff says yes, yes, yes. And also yes, everything can cause phantom pain. Yeah. And guys, again, shameless plug, but that's why I have it up there on my YouTube channel. I've done lots of shows on phantom pain, specifically how it relates sometimes to having a neuroma. Okay. And I have also videos explaining the differences between residual pain, phantom pain, and phantom sensation. So it's always nice to know the differences there to help start tackling things there. See, Scott says, microprocessor foot was mentioned today at appointment. Advantages and downfalls, another part of the plugged-in life. Yes. So which one is it? Is it the Elan? Scott, do you happen to know the name of it? Or is it I think it's called... the Triton. I'm telling you guys, this is why I started my blog and my podcast with everything you need to know about prosthetic feet, because of these names. So all these, and yes, this is a total shameless plug that you need to go listen to my podcast or read my blog, because I explain it in easy detail how to navigate the world of prosthetic feet. But when it comes to prosthetic feet, okay, I don't necessarily look at the fancy names. So they've got all these really great names like the Odyssey, the Maverick, the Renegade, really great names. Don't get me wrong. They're total badass names, and congrats to the marketing departments that come up with these names, but they don't tell you a whole lot about the foot. Like, what is the foot meant to do, right? So there's 10 classifications of prosthetic feet. Okay, you've got Satch feet, single axis feet, multi-axial feet, energy storing and response feet, dynamic response feet, hydraulic feet, wait for it, blades, running blades, stubby feet, microprocessor feet. Oh my gosh, I'm missing one. And the hybrid feet. Okay. 10 different classifications, right? And each of these classifications has a different way that the foot functions and different benefits to it. Okay. So usually, oh, Scott says he just mentioned it because I asked about problems on hills and getting into a car. Okay, so usually with of course, the one microprocessor foot that I'm thinking that's out there on the market, it's a very popular foot. It's the Elan, E-L-A-N, made by Blatchford. I actually did a show on it quite a bit ago. Okay, but basically the Elan foot is a hydraulic foot, right? So it's got the fluid, it's got the little chamber, and it adjusts the friction, right, with the hydraulics. So the microprocessor component added to it, what it does is instead of the person being the one to adjust what's going on, the microprocessor unit takes information from the environment with the sensors and then adjusts the friction of the fluid that way in the foot. Okay, so Scott, if you're someone who likes to go up and down, if you're having issues with problems on hills and getting into car and ramps, that's another big one. Sometimes a hydraulic foot is a very nice option. It feels much more connected to the ground. So Scott, I would really encourage you, especially if you're in the market for a new foot, read my blog and listen to the podcast on different classifications of prosthetic feet and then how to go about choosing a prosthetic foot. Okay, and this is information that you can take to your prosthetist so you can have a real good conversation about this, right? So it sounds like for you that, yeah, maybe the hydraulic foot is something because it keeps you more connected to the ground. It makes it easier to go on uneven terrain up and down those ramps. The question is, do you want to add a microprocessor unit to it? Okay. So the pro is that a lot of people, it feels very natural, right? That they put on that microprocessor foot and their reaction is, woo, that feels really good. It feels like almost my normal foot did, right? Because the computerized component is doing the work for you, right? The con is it's a microprocessor. And like you said, you are plugged in, which means you cannot take it into water, right? So if you're someone who likes to go to the pool or the beach, can't do that, right? And there's a microprocessor component in there. So if you're somebody who does high impact activity, not a good idea for that either. So one of my classic examples was a gentleman I had in my clinic. He was a below the knee amputee, and he was a hunter. He liked to go hunting, and he also liked to go fishing on a boat, like not just off the pier. He'd like to get on a boat and go fishing. And he was thinking about the Elan because it had kind of just come out and it was kind of coming big, and he heard a lot about it from his prosthetist. And he admitted it felt real good when he tried it on, but because of his lifestyle and his hobbies, he knew that taking it hunting and climbing up a deer stand and going on a boat where there's going to be a lot of salt water here in Florida, not a good idea necessarily for that microprocessor foot. Okay. So he ended up going with the hydraulic foot. I think it's the Echelon. And every company, guys, every company has a hydraulic foot. Okay. College Park's version of the hydraulic foot is called the Odyssey, right? So he tried a couple of different hydraulic feet, and he ended up going with that and was very happy with it. Okay. Those are the basic pros and cons. Let's see, powerful what Jesus says. Could this shooting lightning pain be piriformis syndrome related? I was told this ice pack calms it down. It seems like super phantom pain, but it's very strong and stops and goes every few minutes. Yes, it could very well be. Okay. Guys, phantom pain can be caused by many different things. It can be caused by a neuroma. It can be caused by other types of scar tissue pulling in on a nerve. It could be caused by a nerve, something going on in the back, right? Nerve type pain. And sometimes in the absence of everything else, it could be something that we just yet don't know about what's going on with the brain identifying trying to have the memory of the foot there and it's not working. So in the case of piriformis syndrome, so when you have your piriformis is a tiny, tiny little muscle and it's located deep within your bottom, right? So underneath your gluteal muscles It's a tiny little muscle and it helps with external rotation of the hip. Okay. But it sits right on top of your sciatic nerve. Okay. So if you look at your index finger, that's about the size of your sciatic nerve. It's a pretty big, beefy nerve. And your piriformis is only about the size of 2 fingers, right? So it's not a very big muscle, especially in proportion to this really big, fat nerve. The piriformis sits right on top of the sciatic nerve. So if the piriformis, being a small, tiny muscle, if it gets stressed and spazzes out, it's going to clamp down on that sciatic nerve. Okay. And it's going to send fireworks. So in individuals who are not amputees, they get what they call, it's my sciatica going off, right? And in an amputee, it's going to feel like phantom pain. So in your case, the fact that ice packs calm it down, that's a good indication as to where that phantom pain is coming from and what's triggering it. And in my previous shows, I've talked a lot about that in terms of, as you know, as best as we can, we try to identify what is it that's causing this phantom pain, because it's going to allow us to hopefully be able to address it better, right? So in your case, it would be saying, okay, what is weak? Why is it that my piriformis is stressing out? Is it because the muscles around it are weak and it's having to pick up the slack? In which case, if I start strengthening those gluteal muscles, it'll take the stress off the piriformis and then relieve that stress on that sciatic nerve, right? Also involved would be good stretching exercises to really target that piriformis, to stretch it out a little bit and get it to relax a little bit. Does that make sense? See, Jeff says, if all goes as planned, I will be at Baka Boot Camp with my new knees. Jeff, you got to go say hi to Marianne. You two should meet. I think you two would have a great time together. And the bionic feet. Yes, Keith. Let's see, Denise says, had phantom pain a few times a month before, massager. So maybe it is making a difference. And again, yeah, it's really about, like, again, finding what that trigger is for the phantom pain. And guys, I know for some of you, you don't know what it is, right? Sometimes your pain will just go off intermittently without warning. You know, and I'm sorry to say I don't have answers to that. But we try our best again just to try to identify what are the common factors when you do have a phantom pain episode, just to see if you can trace back the source. I don't have any pictures of a stubby. Dave, I'm going to ask. My favorite stubby is the one Sidekicks. It's the one College Park makes. It's like a little square platform, and it has like a nice tire tread on the bottom. Some people might call it like a goat foot, because it's, you know, just kind of a smaller foot like that. So yeah, Linda says, try as many as you can. Ding, ding, ding. Linda, you are the winner tonight. Absolutely. In the blog where I'd say how to choose a prosthetic foot, one of the things I really talk about is utilizing the trial feet program provided by these manufacturers. Okay. Pretty much all the big dogs offer a trial program. I know for a fact, because I've partnered with College Park for many years now. They have a 30-day trial foot program. That means you get to trial a foot out for 30 days. And if it doesn't work out for you, you can send it back, no charge. Okay. And I talk about this a lot. And I can't tell you how many times I've had someone come up to me and say, I went to my prosthetist, they gave me a foot, the end. And I asked them, did they give you any options? Nope. Did they let you try the foot before you signed on the dotted line? Nope. Okay. So this is one of your rights as a patient. And this is where I want you all to advocate for yourselves when it comes to choosing a foot for the first time, when it comes to choosing a new foot and perhaps upgrading. You should try a minimum of 2 feet. Minimum. Okay. And what I want you to do is, before you go choose those 2 feet, you go read my blog on everything you need to know about prosthetic feet, so that you know what are the kind of feet you want to choose to trial. Okay. And if you have a prosthetist who is not willing to let you trial 2 different feet, you need to find yourself a different prosthetist. Okay. I work with some amazing prosthetists. All of them let their patients trial feet, all of them. And they let them take the foot out of the clinic. Okay. And I talk all about the details on how to get that done in the blog. So yes, go read the blog. I put a lot of time into writing it, so I want you guys to go read it. Let's see. Tom says, I am trying out the Challenger foot by Ottobock, and it's amazing. Great for run walking. I want to hear more about that one, Tom. Harsh says, I have the hydraulic foot. Yes, you're right. It is going to be a heavier weight. The hydraulics, because it has hydraulics in it, it's going to be a heavier foot. That being said, okay, if the suspension is spot on, it should not feel heavy. It might feel heavier in comparison to another foot, but if your prosthetist did a good job with suspension, it should not feel heavy. It should feel good, right? And it also lets you, with the hydraulic foot, the rollover, right? It doesn't have like that. It doesn't have like a little blind spot. Some of the feet, when you roll over them, it's almost like there's like a little bit of a blind spot, and then you keep moving. It's just split second like that. With the hydraulic foot, it's a bit more of a smooth rollover. So again, it gives you more efficiency when you're walking. So that should balance out the extra weight. And yes, very durable, pretty durable. Linda says, I had one and it didn't fit in many of my shoes and boots. And again, this, guys, this is another point I stress a lot. Every person is different. Every person is different. And I see this on the support groups, and sometimes it just makes me go, ugh. You know, you see one person who is exalting the glory of one of their prosthetic components. And that's wonderful. That's great that you guys talk to each other about this component I'm trying out, and this component that works great for me, and this and that and the other. But no two people are alike, okay? So what's going to work fantastically for one person may not necessarily work for the person sitting next to them, okay? And this is a good example, you know, and sometimes, especially for my ladies, you know, wanting to have a foot that may accommodate to different types of footwear that you have, right? That plays a factor into it, okay? All things to take into account. So Shelly asks, for that, does TMR surgery help? And I'm assuming you're referring to the phantom pain. So TMR surgery is targeted muscle reinnervation. And it can help with phantom pain if the phantom pain is being caused by a neuroma. Okay. So when a surgeon does an amputation, they'll cut through the skin, cut through muscles, cut through bone. They take the nerve, they slice it, and then it gets tucked back into the soft tissue. Okay. So what happens is that nerve ending is flip-flopping around, and it's got nothing to do. So idle hands make devil's work, right? So what happens is a scar tissue will form around the end of that nerve, and that is called a neuroma, okay? And sometimes those neuromas can cause fireworks, right? They can trigger a lot of pain in the residual limb. They can trigger a lot of phantom pain. Okay. So yes, when someone comes to me complaining of really severe phantom pain that is just debilitating, one of the things that I'll be thinking about in my brain is this a neuroma? Is this person sitting on a neuroma? Okay. Because if they are, then yes, the targeted muscle reinnervation surgery has really wonderful results and outcomes with helping with phantom pain. And I've done lots of shows. Actually, the guy who pioneered that surgery, Dr. Greg Dumanian, awesome surgeon. He was on the show several times in 2022. Okay, so Shelly, if you go to my YouTube channel, if you go to my Facebook page in the archives and you go through 2022, you'll see the shows that I did with TMR Nerve and Dr. Dumani and a couple of other surgeons there, and a lot of really great information there. So I would encourage you to go there. And don't forget to subscribe, please. Thank you. Diana, I'm going to save your question for when Ronnie Dixon comes back on the show. So Diana asked, are there certain types of feet that are better for AKs and BKs? Off the top of my head, because again, I don't think of it in terms of the names of the different feet. I just think of the classifications. And everything just depends on the activity of the person. That's really what it boils down to. If I have somebody who's super active, whether they're an above the knee or below the knee, and they're all over the place, they're young, they're very, very active, I'm going to think more multi-axial dynamic response or the hybrid foot, which hybrid feet tend to combine a little bit of those two characteristics. You know, and again, this would be a really great question to pose to Ronnie Dixon, and he's coming back on the show on April 17th. So he'll be on the show April 17th. If you guys haven't seen Ronnie, y'all need to come. He's like awesome prosthetist. His clinic sponsors the show. It's actually their third year in a row sponsoring the Cozy Talk show. And he just comes on the show and he answers all prosthetic questions. So we're going to save that question, Diana, because I'd be curious actually to hear what Ronnie has to say about something like that. What's going on in Denver, Harsh? What's going on there? All right, guys, just as a reminder, next week, April 3rd, Click Medical is coming on the show. And I've actually never done a show like the one I'm going to do next week. Y'all have been with me for these past few years. You know that when it comes to all things amputee, when it comes to insurance and reimbursement, I am out of my wheelhouse and it is above my pay grade. I am not the expert on insurance and reimbursement. So next week, we're going to do a show just on that. We're going to go over some of the basics of the coding for insurance, the coding system that is used by insurance companies. And this is going to hopefully help you have an understanding as to why it's important to get the coding correctly when you're going to apply for a prosthetic componentry, okay? So we're going to be diving into that. And the reason is because Click Medical finally has a code for insurance. And this is really, really, really huge. And we're going to be explaining the why next week, why this is so important. Okay. So next week, guys, you're going to want to be here. Click Medical. We have giveaways. Those of you who are on my email list, which by the way, if you want to be on my email list, go to cozytalks.com, get on that email list because you'll be the first ones to hear about how to sign up for giveaways. All right. Any shots that you should receive for the piriformis muscles, that is not something I can advise you on. From a physical therapy standpoint, I like to do conservative treatment first. So if you haven't worked with a physical therapist yet, I would go do that first. They can do an assessment to identify what exactly is going on with your piriformis, what's going on with the muscles around it, and start working with you that way. In terms of shots, like a corticosteroid shot to kind of help with things, or maybe sometimes even a shot to help with muscle spasticity. And of course, I'm completely brain fogging right now on the word for it. But that's something to be discussed more with the surgeon. But I would encourage you first seek out the physical therapy treatment and talk with your surgeon about that, or your orthopedic doctor. Let's see. Okay. Let's see. Yes. So Denise, I'm excited about it. I'm learning a lot more about it myself, and it is a game changer. Jeff says, I want the code for the X3 knee. You and me, brother, man. You and me, brother. Out of there. All right, guys. This has been a really good show. You guys kept me talking for a while. Guys, if I did not get to your question, if I somehow missed your question on the show, please don't be shy. Send me an email. Cozy@cozytalks.com. I check all my addresses, and guys, there's been one or two people in the past few weeks that I have accidentally not answered their messages. It wasn't on purpose. It's just because I receive dozens of messages a week on several different platforms, and sometimes one slips through the cracks. So if I have not answered your question within 48 business hours, within 2 business days, send me a nudge and say, hey, Cozy, I sent you an email a couple of days ago. You haven't answered me yet. Don't be shy about doing that, guys. So sometimes those things happen. All right, guys, as always, thank you for letting me be a part of your lives this evening. I will see you same bat time, same bat channel next week. Don't forget, super special show with Click Medical and cracking the coding system with insurance. All right, guys, have a great evening and happy Easter. Oh my gosh, I can't believe I almost forgot. It's Holy Week. Happy Easter. Happy Easter, guys. Take joy in the risen Christ. God bless. Bye.